The planet Viral was not kind to humans. Its skies were a pale orange, thick with dust and heat, and its ground cracked under the endless sun. Winds howled across the barren plains, carrying sharp particles that cut the skin and made breathing difficult. Only those who were strong, clever, and determined could survive here. Yet humans had arrived, driven by necessity, searching for new homes beyond Earth. Mara adjusted her worn cloak as she walked across the settlement. Her small home, made from salvaged metal and reinforced stone, was barely enough to shield her and her child from the planet's dangers. Her child, Tailai, was small, curious, and bright-eyed, with hair the color of sunlight. Mara's heart ached every time she looked at Tailai, thinking about how fragile life was on this world. Life on Viral was a constant battle. Food was scarce, water even scarcer, and predators, creatures with sharp claws and keen intelligence, roamed the deserts in search of prey. The colony had grown over the years, but it remained fragile. Everyone did what they could to survive, but hope was always tinged with fear. Mara paused at the edge of the settlement, scanning the horizon. A figure appeared in the distance, walking steadily toward them. At first, she thought it was another colonist. But as the figure drew closer, she realized it was a stranger. He moved with a confidence she had never seen before, carrying a pack and wearing a suit that seemed to reflect the sun. His steps were steady, controlled, as if he had come from a place far beyond Viral. Her instincts screamed caution. Mara had learned to be careful. Outsiders could bring help, but they could also bring danger. Still, something about this stranger felt different. There was a calm strength about him that made her chest tighten in curiosity and fear. The stranger stopped at the edge of the settlement, lifting a hand in greeting. He had dark hair, close cropped, and eyes that seemed to see everything. His face was calm, almost unreadable, but there was warmth in his expression. "I am Ryan," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "I come in peace. I mean no harm." Mara's grip on Tailai tightened instinctively. "Who are you? Where do you come from?" "From the stars," Ryan said simply. "I have traveled far. I want to help, if you will let me." Mara's mind raced. Travelers from the stars were rare, almost a legend among colonists. They brought knowledge, tools, and sometimes weapons, but they also brought change, and change could be dangerous. "Why should I trust you?" she asked, her voice firm. Ryan lowered his gaze, not with shame but with honesty. "You do not have to trust me immediately. I can only show you through my actions." Before Mara could respond, a sudden cry shattered the air. It was Tailai. The child had wandered a little too far, drawn by the movement of small creatures that scuttled across the sand. Mara's heart leaped. She ran toward Tailai, but before she could reach the child, the ground around them seemed to shift. A predator, unlike anything Mara had seen, leapt from the shadows. Its body was sleek, covered in dark scales that reflected the sun, and its eyes glowed with a terrifying intelligence. Mara froze for a moment, fear gripping her completely. The predator moved faster than she could react. Tailai screamed, and Mara shouted as she lunged forward. In an instant, Ryan moved. He threw himself between the predator and Tailai, his body hitting the ground with a force that sent sand flying. The predator snarled and lunged at him, claws extended. Ryan caught its strike with his arms, rolling aside with strength and precision that stunned Mara. "Run, child," he shouted, pushing Tailai back toward her mother. Mara grabbed Tailai, her arms trembling, as Ryan engaged the predator. He moved with calculated precision, striking its side with his elbow, dodging claws, and landing blows that were powerful enough to make the creature retreat slightly. Mara's breath caught in her throat. She had never seen a human fight with such skill and courage. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Ryan stood, the predator staggering backward and retreating into the dunes. He was breathing heavily, and Mara noticed a gash across his shoulder. Blood stained his shirt, but he did not collapse. He looked toward Mara and Tailai, his expression calm but strained. "Are you both safe?" he asked, his voice steady. Mara nodded, unable to speak at first. She held Tailai close, feeling the warmth of her child against her chest. You saved her." "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. Ryan nodded. "It is my choice. No one asked me to. No one forced me. I saw a life in danger, and I acted." Mara looked at him, trying to understand this man who had thrown himself between life and death for her child. Something inside her shifted. Gratitude mixed with awe, and a small part of her heart felt an unfamiliar warmth. "Come with me," she said finally. "I will help you. You need care for that wound." Ryan allowed her to guide him. He walked steadily, though his steps were slower now, clearly feeling the injury. Mara supported him as best she could, leading him into her home. Inside, she tended to his wound with the limited medical supplies they had. Tailai watched quietly, her small fingers tracing the edge of the table. "Why did you do it?" Mara asked softly. Ryan looked at the child, then at Mara. "Because it was right. Life matters. No one deserves harm if it can be prevented." Mara's heart ached with a mixture of relief and confusion. She had spent years protecting Tailai, teaching her how to survive. And yet, this stranger had done something she could not, something she had not imagined anyone could do. Over the next few hours, Ryan rested while Mara prepared simple food. She noticed how careful he was not to burden her, how he observed everything in the room with a quiet attention that felt almost otherworldly. Tailai, curious and brave, edged closer, asking questions in her small, soft voice. Ryan answered patiently, explaining things about the stars and distant planets in words simple enough for a child to understand. By evening, the settlement's other inhabitants had gathered outside Mara's home. Whispers ran through the small crowd. A stranger had arrived, and he had fought off a predator with his own body. Some spoke in awe, others in fear. Change was always dangerous, and humans feared what they did not understand. Mara stepped outside with Tailai. She wanted the colonists to see that this man was not a threat. "He saved my child," she said firmly. "He came here to help. Do not fear him." Some nodded, though others remained skeptical. Ryan did not speak, he simply observed, calm and steady, his gaze scanning the settlement as if memorizing everything. That night, as the twin moons of Viral rose high in the sky, Mara lay beside Tailai, thinking about the day's events. She felt a strange mix of relief, fear, and curiosity. The stranger had saved her child, but who was he really? Why had he come to this desolate planet? And what would his presence mean for their fragile colony? Outside, Ryan sat beneath the orange sky, tending to minor injuries and examining the land. His mind was already planning ways to help the settlement survive. He did not seek gratitude or recognition. For him, the lives of the innocent were enough reason to act. He thought about Mara and Tailai and felt a quiet resolve. On this harsh planet, humans were fragile, but they had the capacity to rise above danger. He would ensure that capacity flourished. Morning came with a scorching sun. The colony was alive with activity, repairing homes, checking water supplies, and hunting for food. Mara moved through her daily tasks, her thoughts constantly returning to Ryan. She watched him from a distance as he examined the landscape, noting changes in the wind, patterns of predators, and sources of water. He moved with purpose, and yet he never forced his presence on anyone. Talai, fearless and curious, ran up to Ryan. "Are you going to stay?" she asked, eyes wide with wonder. Ryan knelt to meet her gaze. "I am here to help," he said simply. "For now, that means I stay. But I am not here to take anything from you. I only want to protect." Talai smiled, and Mara felt her heart lighten. Perhaps this stranger was not just a visitor. Perhaps he could become something more: a protector, a teacher, a friend. Yet Mara also felt the weight of responsibility. She could not allow herself to depend entirely on him, no matter how tempting it was. The colony had survived without him for years. Could they do it again, should he ever leave? The day passed with small successes. Ryan helped fortify shelters, suggested improvements to water collection, and even taught some of the children basic survival skills. The colonists began to look at him with cautious respect, recognizing that his presence could be the difference between life and death on Viral. As the sun set, painting the sky with streaks of orange and red, Mara sat with Talai and watched Ryan from afar. He moved with ease and confidence, a figure of calm strength in a chaotic world. She knew life would never be the same. He had arrived as a stranger, but his actions had already begun to change everything. Mara hugged Talai tightly. "He is different," she whispered. "But maybe different is what we need." And under the twin moons of Viral, Ryan watched over the colony silently, ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead, willing to give his strength, his courage, and perhaps even his life for those who could not defend themselves. The morning sun rose over Viral, casting long shadows across the cracked earth. The colony was alive with movement, every human focused on survival. Mara stepped outside her home, carrying a small bundle of water for Talai. The child followed closely, her eyes bright with curiosity and wonder. Mara's thoughts drifted to Ryan, the stranger who had arrived seemingly from nowhere and saved her child with his own body. Ryan had become a quiet presence in the settlement. He did not demand attention or recognition, but his actions spoke louder than words. Mara watched him as he examined the surrounding terrain, checking for signs of predators and sources of water. Every movement he made was precise and deliberate, revealing a mind honed by experience. Talai ran ahead, laughing, chasing a small desert creature. Mara called out, "Be careful," but her eyes were drawn to Ryan, who had already noticed the child. Without hesitation, he moved to intercept a hidden danger Mara had not seen. He scooped Talai up and held her protectively as the creature scuttled past, harmless but startling to a small child. Mara's chest swelled with gratitude and relief. "Thank you," she said softly, unable to hide the warmth in her voice. Ryan merely nodded, setting Talai down gently. "Always watch over her," he said. "But she must also learn to be aware." The day passed with Ryan assisting the colonists in small but critical ways. He helped repair broken shelters, suggested improvements for water collection, and taught the children basic survival skills. Mara observed quietly, noting how the colony responded. Some colonists were in awe, their eyes wide as they watched a human act with such courage and skill. Others whispered, uncertain about the stranger's presence, unsure if his power could be trusted. Mara's heart carried a mixture of pride and unease. She had never met someone like Ryan. His bravery was extraordinary, his intelligence unmatched, and his presence comforting. Yet she wondered if gratitude was becoming a form of reliance. Could she allow herself to depend on him? Could the colony survive without him if he ever left? By late afternoon, Ryan approached Mara as she tended to Talai in the small garden outside their home. The garden was a patch of green among the dry, cracked earth, sustained by careful irrigation and constant effort. "You work hard," Ryan said, his voice calm. "You protect her with every action. I can see it in how you move, how you plan." Mara looked up, surprised. "You notice?" she asked softly. "I notice," Ryan replied. "I also notice how much you worry, how much fear you carry. It is natural. Survival carries both strength and anxiety. You have both in abundance." Mara felt a flicker of emotion she could not name. Gratitude, yes, but also a strange curiosity. How could someone be so calm, so aware, in a place that demanded constant vigilance? "Talai learns quickly," Ryan continued, kneeling to observe the child. "She is curious, brave, and intelligent. She will survive here, but she must also learn to be cautious. The world is unforgiving." Mara nodded. She had spent every day teaching Talai about danger, about the creatures that roamed the desert, and about the storms that could sweep away the colony in an instant. Now, with Ryan's presence, Talai's education expanded beyond what Mara could teach alone. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, the colony gathered around a small fire in the center of the settlement. Mara stood near Talai, who sat quietly, listening to the adults talk about the day's events. Ryan remained slightly apart, observing the colony with calm attention. A young man named Jalen, one of the colony's hunters, approached Mara cautiously. "That stranger," he said quietly, "he saved your child. But we need to be careful. We do not know why he is here, or what he wants." Mara understood his concern. "He acts to protect," she said firmly. "He does not demand anything. He saved Talai when no one else could. That should matter." Jalen frowned. "It does. But gratitude can become obligation. We cannot let that happen. We must remember that he is a person, not a tool." Mara considered his words. She had already felt that tension within herself. She had allowed herself to feel safe because of Ryan, but she did not want Talai or the colony to become dependent on him. Night fell over Viral, and the twin moons rose into the sky, casting a silver light across the settlement. Mara lay beside Talai, listening to her gentle breathing. The child was asleep, dreaming perhaps of creatures that were not dangerous and skies that were safe. Mara's thoughts returned to Ryan. She knew he was awake, watching over them quietly, as he had done since his arrival. Ryan sat outside, his eyes scanning the horizon. He was not idle, nor was he relaxed. Every sound, every movement, was noted, analyzed, and prepared for. He thought about the colony, about Mara and Talai, and about the challenges that lay ahead. The planet was harsh, and humans were fragile, but he had faith in their resilience. They could rise above danger, and he would help them do so. The next morning brought a new challenge. A sandstorm was forming on the eastern horizon, its massive wall of dust and wind rolling across the plains. The colony had faced storms before, but this one was larger than any in recent memory. Mara alerted the others, calling for everyone to secure shelters and protect water supplies. Ryan moved with precision, helping to reinforce walls, distribute sandbags, and guide the children to safe areas. His calm demeanor inspired confidence. The colonists followed his directions without question, trusting in his knowledge and experience. Mara worked alongside him, carrying supplies and checking on Talai, who clung to her mother with wide eyes. The storm arrived quickly, winds howling and sand whipping through the air. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Mara held Talai close, struggling to move against the force of the wind. She caught sight of Ryan, who was helping others reach safety, his body a shield against the storm. Mara's heart raced. She had seen him fight predators, but this was different. The storm did not act with intelligence, but it was relentless, and the danger was everywhere. Hours passed. The storm raged, and the colony endured. Thanks to Ryan's guidance, no one was seriously injured, though some shelters were damaged. Mara was exhausted, but a sense of relief washed over her. Ryan had not only protected her child but had also led the colony through one of the most dangerous events they had faced. When the storm finally passed, the settlement emerged from the dust and debris. Mara looked around at the faces of the colonists, tired, dirty, but alive. She caught sight of Ryan, his suit torn and dust-covered, yet he stood calmly, surveying the damage and ensuring everyone was safe. Talai ran to him, smiling. "You saved us again," she said, her small hands reaching up. Ryan smiled gently, lifting her briefly into his arms. "I am here to protect," he said simply. "That is what I do." Mara watched, a mix of admiration and concern in her eyes. She knew Ryan's presence was extraordinary, but she also knew the tension it created. Gratitude was powerful, but it could become a bond that was difficult to break. She had to be careful, not only for herself but for the colony. Over the following days, Ryan continued to teach, guide, and protect. Mara noticed how he quietly observed each person, learning their strengths and weaknesses. He did not force his knowledge upon them but shared it when needed. The colony began to thrive in small ways, shelters were stronger, water collection improved, and children learned new skills. Mara and Ryan spent time together, not as teacher and student, but as partners in survival. They planned strategies, shared observations about the planet, and discussed ways to protect the colony from predators and storms. Mara realized she was learning as much from him as Talai was. His wisdom, courage, and calm presence were changing how she saw the world and her place in it. One evening, as the twin moons rose high in the sky, Mara sat beside Ryan outside her home. Talai slept peacefully inside. The air was still, and the stars twinkled above. "You are different from anyone I have ever known," Mara said softly. "You care for others without asking anything in return." Ryan looked at her, his eyes calm and steady. "Because it is the right thing to do. Life matters. Protecting it is not a choice, it is responsibility." Mara nodded, understanding more than she could express. She felt a connection forming, not only of gratitude but of respect and trust. Ryan had saved Talai, guided the colony, and shared his knowledge without expectation. He had become part of their lives, not as a ruler, but as a guardian. The night was quiet, the settlement calm. Mara hugged Talai close, feeling the warmth of her child and the quiet presence of Ryan nearby. She knew challenges lay ahead, but for the first time, she felt a sense of hope. With courage, wisdom, and unity, the colony could survive. With Ryan among them, they had a chance not only to survive but to thrive. And Ryan, watching the colony he now protected, felt the same. Humans were fragile, yet resilient. They had the capacity to rise above danger, to learn, to grow, and to survive. He would ensure that capacity flourished, no matter the cost. Life in the colony had begun to change since Ryan's arrival. Mara noticed it first in the way the children ran freely, learning to climb rocks, hunt small creatures, and recognize dangerous patterns in the sand. Taylai's laughter echoed more often through the settlement, a sign of growing confidence and courage. Yet, with these small victories came a quiet tension. Mara felt it each time she saw the colonists glance at Ryan with awe, or when whispers of his power spread through the settlement. One morning, Mara rose early, carrying a container of water for Taylai. The twin suns were just beginning to warm the horizon, and the settlement was stirring. Ryan was already awake, examining the edge of the cliffs near the settlement. His movements were careful, precise, and Mara could see his mind working even in the early hours. "You watch everything," Mara said softly as she approached. Ryan glanced at her. "Observation is necessary. The planet does not forgive mistakes. One missed sign could cost lives." Mara nodded. She admired his focus, yet her heart carried a quiet unease. Ryan was helping the colony survive, but his presence also reminded her of how vulnerable humans were on Viral. She wondered if the colonists had begun to rely too heavily on him, placing their trust in someone who was not bound to them by family, community, or tradition. Taylai ran up, holding a small collection of rocks she had found. "Look," she exclaimed. "I found shapes in the sand. Can we learn what they mean?" Ryan knelt beside her, examining the patterns carefully. "These are predator tracks," he said. "Some are old, but some are recent. You have a sharp eye. That will help you survive." Mara watched quietly. Her child was learning at an extraordinary rate, guided by someone who had experience beyond anything she could teach alone. She felt pride, but she also felt the weight of dependency. By midday, tensions began to surface among the colonists. Some were beginning to question Mara's closeness to Ryan. They respected him, yes, but there were murmurs that gratitude had grown into obligation. A group of colonists, led by a man named Jalen, approached Mara while she was collecting water. "You trust him too much," Jalen said quietly, his voice carrying concern. "We all saw what he did for Taylai. But he is not ours. We cannot control him. We cannot demand his protection. Are you sure you are not holding him here out of fear of losing your child?" Mara's chest tightened. She had felt that tension herself. "I owe him my child's life," she said firmly. "But I am not holding him. He is here because he chooses to be. You do not understand what it means to survive here." Jalen shook his head. "We understand survival. But survival does not give us ownership over someone's will. If we rely on him too much, we may find ourselves helpless if he ever leaves. That is dangerous." Mara sighed, knowing his words were not wrong. She had been afraid of losing Taylai, afraid of facing predators alone, afraid of storms that could crush the settlement. But she could not deny the truth: Ryan stayed of his own will. He had never demanded gratitude or obedience. His actions were not for reward but for protection and guidance. The following day, a new threat emerged. A large predator, more cunning and dangerous than any they had seen before, was spotted near the outskirts of the settlement. Its movements were deliberate, hunting patterns precise. Mara and Ryan observed it carefully. "This creature is intelligent," Ryan said. "It tests its prey. It will return if we are not prepared." Mara's stomach tightened. She had already relied on Ryan's skill to protect Talai once. Could she face this predator without him? Could anyone in the colony survive on their own against such a threat? Ryan knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Do not fear," he said calmly. "I will not abandon those I protect. But you must also prepare. Teach them to think, to act, and to survive. If the day comes when I cannot be here, they will be ready." Mara nodded, understanding his words. She felt a mixture of relief and responsibility. Ryan's presence was a gift, but she could not allow herself or the colony to rely entirely on him. They had to grow, to become capable of facing danger on their own. That evening, the predator struck. Its attack was swift and calculated. Mara watched in horror as it approached the settlement, its eyes glowing in the twilight. Colonists scrambled to protect their homes and children. Talai ran to Mara, fear in her eyes. Ryan moved without hesitation, intercepting the creature before it could reach the child. The battle was intense. Ryan dodged sharp claws, struck with precise blows, and used his knowledge of the terrain to gain advantage. Mara assisted, carrying water and guiding other colonists to safe areas. The fight was over as quickly as it began. The predator retreated, injured but alive, and the colony was safe. Mara's heart pounded as she looked at Ryan, who stood with his chest heaving but his expression calm. Talai ran into his arms, and he lifted her gently, setting her safely in Mara's care. "You were brave," Mara said softly, her voice trembling. "You saved all of us." Ryan nodded. "Bravery alone does not save lives. Preparation, knowledge, and awareness do. You and your people must learn these things. That is how survival continues." The next morning, Mara gathered the colonists. "Ryan is not just a protector," she said. "He is a teacher. We must learn from him, grow, and prepare ourselves. We cannot rely on him alone, but we can learn how to face danger together." Ryan nodded quietly, observing as the colonists began to train and learn. Mara noticed the change in their demeanor. Confidence grew where fear had existed. Knowledge replaced hesitation. They began to understand that survival was not just about strength or skill but about wisdom and unity. Yet Mara could not shake a quiet tension within herself. Ryan had saved Talai with his body. His strength and courage were extraordinary. The gratitude she felt was powerful, and she realized it had created a bond, unspoken but strong. Could she ever let him leave? Could she face the world without his protection? Days passed, and the colony became stronger, but challenges continued. Food was scarce, water remained precious, and predators lurked constantly. Ryan continued to guide, protect, and teach. Mara learned to balance her gratitude with responsibility. She began to train alongside him, learning techniques to protect Talai and the settlement. The bond between them grew, not as master and student, but as partners facing danger together. One evening, Mara and Ryan stood at the edge of the settlement, watching the twin moons rise over the desert. The air was still, and the stars glittered above. "Do you ever wish to leave?" Mara asked quietly. Ryan considered her question. "I am here by choice," he said. "I stay because I believe in protecting life. If the day comes when my presence is no longer needed, I will leave. But for now, this is where I must be." Mara nodded, understanding more than she could express. His presence was not a duty, not an obligation, but a choice. And that choice was made from courage and principle, not from fear or reward. Talai ran up to them, holding a small collection of flowers she had found in a rare patch of green. "Look," she said, smiling. "We can make the desert beautiful." Ryan smiled, lifting her briefly. "Yes," he said. "Even in harsh places, life can grow." Mara felt a sense of hope. The colony had survived another challenge, stronger and wiser than before. She realized that Ryan's presence was not a crutch but a guide, a teacher who showed them how to rise above danger. The bond between them was strong, built on trust, respect, and shared responsibility. Yet a quiet worry remained in Mara's heart. She owed him her child's life, and that debt was heavy. Could she ever allow him the freedom to leave, or would her gratitude bind him forever? She knew she had to prepare herself for the possibility that Ryan might choose a path that did not include them. The night was calm, the settlement safe, and the colony stronger. Mara hugged Talai close, feeling warmth and love. Ryan watched silently nearby, ready to face whatever danger might come next. Humans were fragile, but they were resilient. They could rise above fear, learn from those who guided them, and grow stronger with each challenge. And with courage, wisdom, and unity, they had a chance not only to survive but to thrive. As the twin moons cast silver light across the settlement, Mara realized the truth of Ryan's presence. He was not just a protector. He was a symbol of human courage, of the ability to rise above danger and fight for life. And in a world as harsh as Viral, that was worth more than any treasure, more than any reward. The twin suns rose slowly over Viral, casting long shadows across the settlement. The colony had grown stronger since Ryan's arrival. The shelters were sturdier, water collection had improved, and the children were learning to survive in the harsh desert. Yet Mara could feel a tension in the air, a sense that danger was never far away. She moved through the settlement early in the morning, checking on Talai and the other children. The wind carried the faint smell of sand and dust, and the sky was tinged with orange. Mara had learned to recognize subtle changes in the air, small signs of predators or approaching storms. She had also learned to notice Ryan, who was already at the edge of the settlement, scanning the horizon with calm, precise movements. "Do you sense anything?" Mara asked, approaching him quietly. Ryan shook his head slowly. "Not yet. But vigilance is necessary. This world does not forgive mistakes. Stay alert." Mara nodded. She had learned to trust his judgment, but she also knew that survival depended on everyone working together. She turned to gather Talai, who was playing with a small group of children near the garden. The child looked up, smiling, unaware of the tension in the adult world. By midday, the threat became clear. Dust clouds appeared on the horizon, moving faster than the wind should have carried them. Mara's heart tightened. This was no ordinary storm. She ran to Ryan, who had already called the colonists together. "It is a superstorm," he said calmly, though his eyes were sharp with concern. "It moves quickly and will reach the settlement within hours. We must prepare immediately." The colonists worked tirelessly under Ryan's direction. They reinforced shelters with metal and stone, dug deeper trenches to redirect water and sand, and guided the children to safe areas. Mara moved quickly, carrying Talai and helping others with supplies. The twin suns beat down on their backs, and the heat was intense, but Ryan's calm presence inspired everyone to act with focus and efficiency. Hours passed, and the storm approached faster than anyone expected. The sky darkened, turning a deep orange-red. The wind howled, carrying sharp sand that cut skin and burned eyes. Mara clutched Talai, who was frightened, and watched as Ryan moved with precision among the colonists, directing, protecting, and encouraging. The storm struck with full force. Shelters shook, and sand flew through every crack. Visibility dropped to nearly zero. Mara huddled with Talai and a group of children in a small reinforced shelter, listening to the roar outside. The noise was deafening, and the ground shook beneath their feet. Ryan moved through the storm, guiding colonists and reinforcing weakened areas. His body became a shield against falling debris and flying sand. Mara watched him from her shelter, awe and fear mixing in her chest. He was not just fighting the storm, he was protecting the lives of everyone, including hers and Talai's. Hours felt like days. The storm battered the settlement, testing every skill and every plan. Mara held Talai close, whispering words of comfort while keeping an eye on the shelter's structure. She realized how fragile human life was on Viral, and how extraordinary Ryan's courage truly was. He had risked his own life countless times for her child, for the colony, and for the future of their people. At one point, a section of the shelter collapsed, trapping several colonists. Mara froze in panic, but Ryan appeared almost instantly, lifting debris and pulling the people to safety. His movements were precise, powerful, and fearless. The colonists were saved, but Mara noticed the strain in his eyes and the sweat on his face. He was exhausted, yet he did not falter. By evening, the storm began to subside, leaving behind destruction and dust. The settlement had survived, but many homes were damaged, and food and water supplies were scattered. Mara emerged from the shelter with Talai, her heart heavy with relief and worry. She searched for Ryan and found him near the edge of the settlement, helping others rebuild and tending to minor injuries. "You saved us again," Mara said softly as she approached him. Ryan looked at her, his expression calm but serious. "I did what I could. The storm was fierce. The planet is harsh. We must be prepared for the next challenge." Mara nodded, realizing the truth in his words. Survival on Viral was not about a single act of bravery, it was about constant vigilance, preparation, and learning. Ryan had not only saved lives with his strength but had taught the colony how to survive, how to act as a united community in the face of danger. Over the next few days, the colony worked tirelessly to repair damage. Mara noticed how Ryan continued to guide without dominating. He taught them how to rebuild stronger shelters, how to reinforce water storage, and how to track predator movements. Each lesson was a step toward independence, yet his presence remained a comfort, a shield, and a guiding light. Mara and Ryan spent time together, planning strategies for future storms and predator attacks. She realized that her gratitude had grown into something more, a deep respect and trust. But she also recognized the weight of that bond. Ryan had saved Talai's life, and the debt she owed him was heavy. Could she ever allow him the freedom to leave, knowing how much he meant to their survival? One evening, as the twin moons rose over the desert, Mara approached Ryan. Talai was asleep inside, exhausted from the recent storm. "Do you ever tire of protecting us?" Mara asked quietly. Ryan considered her question. "Protection is not tiring when it is necessary," he said. "I am here because life matters. Every person, every child, every life is worth protecting. That is why I stay." Mara nodded, understanding his words. His choice was not obligation, it was principle. He stayed not for gratitude or reward but because he believed in the value of life. The following day, a new challenge emerged. A group of colonists had ventured too far in search of food and became trapped by shifting dunes. Mara felt panic rising, but Ryan moved quickly, assessing the situation. "We must act fast," he said. "The dunes are unstable, and the sun will be harsh. If we do not reach them soon, they will be in serious danger." Ryan organized a rescue team, including Mara, and they set out into the desert. The sun was relentless, and the sand shifted with every step. Mara struggled to keep pace, carrying supplies and helping guide the group. Ryan led the way, using his knowledge of the terrain to navigate safely. Hours passed, and the trapped colonists were finally reached. They were exhausted and frightened, but Ryan remained calm, guiding them back to the settlement. Mara watched in awe as he carried supplies, lifted fallen travelers, and kept everyone moving despite the heat and danger. When they returned to the colony, everyone was safe. The relief was overwhelming. Mara held Talai close, feeling gratitude and respect for Ryan, who had once again risked his life to save others. That evening, Mara spoke to him quietly, away from the other colonists. "You do not have to stay," she said softly. "You could leave, explore the stars, and find a place where no one depends on you." Ryan shook his head. "I stay because this is where I am needed. I could leave, yes, but life here matters. Protecting those who cannot protect themselves is my choice." Mara realized that his presence was not a burden or obligation. It was a gift, freely given, and built on courage and principle. She felt a mix of relief and humility, understanding the depth of his sacrifice and strength. The days that followed were quieter but filled with growth. The colony repaired and improved, learning from Ryan's guidance. Mara taught Talai skills she had learned from Ryan, combining strength and wisdom. The bond between them grew stronger, built on trust, respect, and shared experience. Yet a quiet tension remained. Mara owed Ryan her child's life, and the gratitude she felt was profound. She wondered if she could ever allow him the freedom to leave, knowing how much he meant to their survival and safety. She knew she had to prepare herself for the possibility that one day, he might choose a path that did not include them. As the twin moons rose high over Viral, Mara sat with Talai outside their home. The night was calm, and the stars twinkled brightly. Ryan moved silently among the colony, checking shelters and guiding those in need. He was a constant presence, a symbol of courage, wisdom, and protection. Mara hugged Talai tightly, feeling warmth and love. She knew challenges would come again, but with Ryan among them, they had a chance to survive and thrive. Humans were fragile, yet resilient. They could rise above fear, learn from those who guided them, and grow stronger with each challenge. Ryan watched the colony silently, ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead. He had chosen to stay, not out of obligation, but out of principle. And in a world as harsh as Viral, that choice meant the difference between life and death, hope and despair, survival and failure. The colony slept, exhausted but safe. Mara held Talai close, knowing that together, with courage, wisdom, and unity, they could face anything. And Ryan, watching over them, remained their shield, their teacher, and their guardian. The sun rose slowly over Viral, painting the desert in pale gold and orange. The colony had recovered from the storms and dangers of recent days, but the air was filled with a quiet tension. Mara walked through the settlement, checking on Talai and the other children, who played cautiously under the protective eyes of the adults. The lessons they had learned from Ryan were clear in their careful movements, their cautious curiosity, and the way they observed the environment around them. Mara's thoughts were heavy. She had grown to depend on Ryan, but she knew that she owed him not only her child's life but also the safety of the entire colony. His presence had become a symbol of protection and courage, yet she wondered if gratitude had become a silent chain. Could she ever allow him the freedom to leave? Could she face the dangers of Viral without him? Ryan appeared at the edge of the settlement, scanning the horizon. His movements were calm, precise, and purposeful. Mara approached him, Tailai following closely at her side. "You have done more than anyone could ask," Mara said softly. "You saved my child, our people, and our future. But, you do not owe us your life. You are free to leave, if you wish." Ryan turned to look at her, his eyes calm and thoughtful. "Freedom is not about leaving," he said. "It is about choice. I stay because I choose to. Not because I am forced, not because of debt, not because of gratitude. I stay because I believe in what we are building here." Mara considered his words. She had feared losing him, but he was not bound by obligation. His presence was a gift, freely given, and based on principle. She felt a deep sense of relief mixed with humility. Tailai ran up to them, holding a small bundle of flowers she had collected from a patch of green that had survived the storms. "Look," she said, smiling. "Even in the desert, life grows." Ryan knelt and looked at the flowers. "Yes," he said gently. "Life can grow anywhere if it is protected and nurtured. That is what makes it strong." Mara realized that this was the essence of Ryan's presence. He had not come to dominate or control the colony. He had come to guide, protect, and teach. The colony had learned to survive, to act with courage, and to grow stronger with each challenge. And Ryan had done so without asking for reward or recognition. Over the next few days, the colony worked to strengthen its defenses further. Ryan continued to teach the children and adults, showing them how to read the signs of predators, how to find water, and how to reinforce their shelters against storms. Mara watched him closely, noting how carefully he observed each person's abilities, tailoring lessons to each individual's strengths. One afternoon, Mara approached Ryan while he was helping Tailai build a small shelter for her toys. "You have done more than I could have imagined," she said. "You could leave now, explore the stars, and find other worlds. But you stay." Ryan smiled gently. "I stay because this is where I am needed," he said. "I do not stay out of duty or obligation. I stay because protecting life matters. That is my choice, and it is not a burden. It is purpose." Mara nodded, understanding more fully than she could express. She had feared that gratitude had created a silent chain, binding him to them. But his presence was not chained. It was freely given, and it was built on principle, courage, and wisdom. The next challenge came quietly. Scouts reported signs of a large predator near the settlement, moving in patterns that suggested intelligence and planning. Mara felt a tight knot in her stomach, but she also felt confidence. She had learned from Ryan, as had the other colonists. They had grown stronger, more aware, and more capable of facing danger. Ryan assessed the threat carefully. "We will not face it blindly," he said. "Preparation is everything. We will set traps, strengthen defenses, and guide the children to safety. But we must also be ready to act with courage if needed." The predator approached, larger and more cunning than any before. It tested the colony with small movements, sniffing the air, studying the terrain. Mara held Tailai close, observing the creature with both fear and determination. Ryan moved with calm precision, positioning colonists, guiding them to vantage points, and preparing traps. When the predator finally attacked, the colony was ready. The traps worked, slowing its movements, and the adults acted with strategy rather than panic. Mara herself moved with skill and courage, carrying supplies and guiding Talai and other children to safety. Ryan engaged the predator when necessary, his movements deliberate, precise, and protective. The battle was long but controlled. The predator was finally driven away, injured but alive, and the colony had survived without casualties. Mara felt a surge of relief and pride. They had faced danger together, guided by Ryan but empowered by their own courage and skill. As the dust settled, Mara approached Ryan. "You stayed through all of this," she said softly. "Not because you had to, but because you chose to." Ryan nodded. "Yes," he said. "I stay because I believe in life, in growth, and in protection. But your people survived today because of courage, not just because of me. You have learned well." Mara felt a deep sense of respect and humility. She realized that the true gift Ryan had given them was not just protection, but empowerment. The colony had grown stronger, more capable, and more united. They had learned that survival was not only about skill but about courage, wisdom, and unity. That night, Mara sat outside with Talai. The twin moons rose over the desert, casting silver light on the settlement. Ryan moved quietly among the colony, checking on everyone, ensuring that all was safe. Mara watched him, feeling a mixture of gratitude, admiration, and respect. She had feared that her debt to him was a silent chain, but she now understood that his presence was a gift freely given, based on choice and principle. Talai looked up at Mara. "Will he stay forever?" she asked. Mara smiled gently. "He stays because he chooses to. Not because he has to. That is the most important part. He protects us because he believes it is right, not because he is forced." The child nodded, understanding more than her age might suggest. Mara felt a sense of hope. With Ryan among them, the colony had a chance not only to survive but to thrive. They had learned courage, wisdom, and unity. They had learned that life was worth protecting and that strength was built not only in muscles but in heart and mind. Days turned into weeks. The colony grew stronger, more organized, and more confident. Mara continued to guide Talai and the other children, teaching them what she had learned from Ryan. The bond between them grew stronger, built on respect, trust, and shared experience. One morning, Mara approached Ryan as he surveyed the settlement from a high ridge. "You have done more than anyone could ask," she said. "But now, it is your choice. You do not owe us anything. If you wish to leave, you can. I will not ask you to stay." Ryan turned to her, his eyes calm and thoughtful. "I do not leave because this is where I am needed," he said. "I could travel to other worlds, yes. But here, life matters. Here, I can make a difference. That is why I stay." Mara nodded, finally understanding. Gratitude had been heavy, but choice was light. He stayed because he wanted to, because he believed in protection, courage, and life itself. He had not been bound by duty or fear. He had chosen to stay, freely and with purpose. Talai ran up to them, holding a small piece of green she had found among the rocks. "Look," she said. "Even in the desert, life grows." Ryan smiled, lifting her briefly. "Yes," he said gently. "Life can grow anywhere if it is protected and nurtured. That is what makes it strong." Mara realized that the colony had learned more than survival. They had learned courage, wisdom, and the value of life. Ryan had not only protected them, he had shown them what it meant to rise above fear, to act with principle, and to choose courage even in the face of danger. The settlement settled into a peaceful rhythm. Mara watched Talai play with the other children, her heart light. Ryan moved quietly among the colony, helping where needed, teaching, guiding, and protecting. Mara knew that he could leave at any moment, but she also knew that he stayed because of choice, not obligation. That was the most powerful bond of all. And under the twin moons of Viral, Mara, Talai, and Ryan stood together, surrounded by the colony. Life had grown, courage had strengthened, and hope had returned. Humans were fragile, yet resilient. They could rise above danger, learn from those who guided them, and grow stronger with each challenge. And with Ryan's presence a gift freely given, they had not only survived but had become a symbol of human courage and strength. In the harsh desert of Viral, life had found a way. And it would continue, protected by courage, guided by wisdom, and strengthened by choice.